Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of everyone's favorite, the Cave Hour. And I haven't made it out to the cave much in the past however long, like weeks, month. So it's been over a month, but you got to do it. You got to head out to the cave sometimes and just chill out, get away from everything. I think that going to the cave is it's one of those things where it's hard to build up to like the motivation to go. But once you get there, you wonder why you put it on for so long. You know what I mean? Because it's like a form of maintenance. It's sort of a chore. You don't really want to be the one that has to do it, but you want it done. But then once you're actually doing it, getting it done, it's not as bad as you thought it was going to be. And you know what else takes maintenance is relationships. Which this is just a really smooth, normal transition into talking about what I was thinking about talking about today, which is creating and building on relationships, but specifically the process of becoming close to people, because we all know, especially if you're deep enough into the internet to be watching this shit, that we live in an age where we're more connected than ever. We're surrounded by more people than ever, but everyone's kind of just lonely all the time. I don't know if I don't need to speak for everyone, but it's like a weirdly lonely time despite being in such a crowded place all the time. And I think that in response to the sort of, I don't know, chaotic pain, I guess, that comes from living in this internet age that we do. We've kind of come to fetishize independence and not needing anybody else, sort of in response to this need going unmet, this need for connection and relationships with people that are meaningful, that add value to our lives. We've sort of, in almost like a stubborn, SpongeBob saying, I don't need it, I don't need the water kind of way. It's I'm on that Sigma male grind set, even something as culturally phenomenal as Beyonce's Single Ladies, that there's this whole culture built around needing nobody but yourself. And I think both of those examples are more specifically to do with romantic relationships, and I don't know if they're innately hetero related sort of ideals, or if that's just more commonly talked about and those things are more commonly therefore openly applied to hetero relationships, which I don't know if that's really even necessarily relevant. And I didn't mean to talk only about romantic relationships, but relationships and the forming of them takes a level of vulnerability that has become dangerous, honestly, in an internet age. Namely because anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of everyone all the time. When you live in a world where anything that you write or any photo that you take or just fucking anything that you do online is just there forever, and then anybody who looks at that sees this snapshot of you, this past version of you, who has since possibly developed and changed their views and ideas and just grown as a person, they're just going to look at that one thing from however long ago and think of you as that. And it's like having to live on just eggshells all the time. You have to be your own public relations agent everywhere you go. But I wonder if that particular fear or negative repercussion of vulnerability, it's exclusive to an online space and internet friends and internet communities. Maybe I'm just sort of revealing that the only place that I really see myself building relationships at this chapter in my life is online with people all over the internet, which I don't know, is that a bad thing? I don't mean to shame myself for this, but I kind of don't see myself just walking out my front door and knowing where to go to meet people and build relationships at this point. Like, even if I was to just walk out the front door and go meet people, the only way that I can see that happening is if we organized online to meet somewhere. Even if, there's always been this myth that I've heard of like joining a club of some kind, and that's a good way to meet people. I don't know if this club or these clubs exist. Maybe there's like a whole thriving underworld of clubbery happening all around me. I don't know where to look to find it. But even then, where I would find it would be on a website or online. And the closest thing to joining a club that I've ever had in my life, other than maybe at university to an extent, was Dead by Daylight, which was a wake-up call. Dead by Daylight, that's a volatile space. I don't know if it's any worse than any other game or any other online space, but boy howdy, that can do a number on a person. And I've come to understand like why people are so guarded and not wanting to ever become vulnerable. But if you don't open yourself up, you can't form a relationship unless it starts with two people being open to doing so. But to move away from the internet, just if only for a short time, I feel like even in my, I don't know, what do you call the life outside the internet? Is that even just, I don't know, life outside life, real life, walking around? Even with like friends and family who I met with nothing to do with the internet or computers, I always feel there's this like guard or like blockage between me and everyone, where we'll be having a conversation, and like usually if it's in a group environment this happens more, I guess, but like having a conversation with someone, and I'll start to sort of feel like I'm warming up and really getting into like what we're talking about, and then you just sort of feel them pull away and sort of act like it's coming to a natural end, or maybe for them it is. I don't mean to say like they're doing it as some strategy to get away from me, or I don't know. It's not for me to say. Maybe they're just kind of bored of talking about whatever we were talking about. But it happens so often where I have so much gas left in the tank to keep going, and the subject will sort of naturally come to an end, or they'll start looking around like, who else can I talk to? How do I get away from this person trying to connect with me right now? And to be honest, I feel like a lot of like the whole point of like even me doing this right now, this cave hour, is because I guess to an extent, on some level, it's because I'm dissatisfied with my connections with people in my real, quote unquote, real life. I can't talk on this level, or any level even fucking close to this, like the level that I achieve here, which, achieves a strong word when it's just me basically, borderline jerking myself off. It's like having an argument with someone in the shower, an imaginary one. Like, no one's ever lost a shower argument. Like, if you lose a shower argument, you need help. You know what I mean? You need like you need to see like a self-esteem guru or something. But I have to say that I feel this, I don't know, I guess it's sort of a really broad criticism that I have of how I've noticed other people. I mean, look, maybe I'm the problem. I don't know. Let's just keep that on the back burner this whole time. Like, it might be me. But this criticism of how I've found the people with whom I've sort of come close to connecting, but never quite properly or never effectively, the way that they sort of seemingly defend themselves against connecting with people is that they're not open to people making mistakes. They're not open to trial and error of connection, where it feels like there's this pressure to just always to either have connection naturally, quote unquote, naturally form in some accidental behind our own backs kind of way, where we just find ourselves madly like enamored with each other, and like everything's just clicking because we're meant to be, or something like that, which I think is just I think that's a bullshit like myth built by people who don't want to actually put in effort. And it's not about, actually, that's not fair. It's not about not putting in effort, but I think it must come from like a fear of the pain that putting in effort takes, that making yourself vulnerable takes. But there's no fucking, there's an unrealistic expectation, which I think is worsened by what I was saying earlier about everything you say being held against you online. Like, even if you're not talking online, like the internet seems to have trained us to just always be worried about that. You know, everything's all cringe this, and like, I don't know, everyone's calling each other autistic and shit like that these days. But like, it builds this expectation, this pressure to be psychic, or to have like an EQ of 5,000 that's just not realistic. I mean, I feel like emotional intelligence comes from admitting mistakes. You have to learn people's boundaries and like values and stuff over time. Like, it feels like there's this expectation from other people most of the time to just never make a mistake, and if you make one mistake, you're gone, you're out of there. But remember how I said like 5 minutes ago that it might just be me, and I'm the one with the issues. When talking about boundaries, I mean, if somebody starts pulling away from a conversation or something like that, is that not a way of them sort of non-verbally communicating a boundary to me? Like, how can I on one hand say that them doing that is them not being open to being vulnerable, and like it's something that I find frustrating, while at the same time saying you got to learn people's boundaries? I mean, you can't have it both ways. Is that a fair boundary? Like, am I going on record saying that like I think people need to have less boundaries because I want to connect with them against their will? Like, what am I saying here? Because it's not that. It's not like a desire to plow through people's boundaries for the sake of, like, I don't know, causing them harm in any way. But it is painful to live with this desire to sort of be beyond those boundaries and just so constantly be bumping up against them, I guess. And maybe what I'm talking about is more of like a broad social, I don't know, comment about the nature of how we form these boundaries and why we do, and whether we should at large, whether these boundaries should be challenged, if not directly by me in the moment in a social setting, then now in the cave, you know, in like a safer place where we can talk about things in a broader way, where it's sort of separate from ourselves. And I guess having sort of briefly identified a few things about the internet specifically, and our culture in general, that inform how we create boundaries and why we do about ourselves, I guess trying to identify it as a reaction to our inability to connect, or how dangerous connection has become. And I mean, I don't imagine it's ever been an entirely safe thing to open oneself up to, but it seems worse than ever these days. And I think that rather than respond to that fear with sort of a social reclusion, a putting up of fortresses and moats, that it might be possible to make meaningful change in our society at large, you know, and sort of this cultural loneliness that, I mean, nobody else is really ever like, this isn't talked about, but I mean, I sense it, and maybe it's just me projecting, but like I said, if you're this deep into the internet that you're listening to this, I got to imagine you can empathize on some level, or relate to it in some way. Because if you think about like the worst thing that's ever happened from you opening up, for most of us, I bet it's pretty fucking bad. I bet that to go back to that place, to reveal the vulnerability that was damaged, you know, attacked by someone or something in the past, is just nightmare fuel. You know, it's like people have literal borderline PTSD and like nightmares about, you know, how they've been hurt in the past. And why wouldn't you, on sort of a base brain protecting itself level, close yourself off to that. But I guess I'm just starting to feel like the cost is too high overall. And maybe it's that I'm getting older, and I don't know. I guess I've got this worry that we're headed down a kind of dark, like lonely path, or maybe it's just that I'm worried that just maybe I am, and I don't want to. And don't get me wrong, this level of like depressing vulnerability is not the energy that I'm bringing to like a party or like a night out with friends or anything like that. That's not what I'm after. But at the end of the day, this is the cave hour. This is a judgment-free zone where you can be a little looser with that sort of stuff, and there's no judgment allowed in the cave. That's one of the main rules I didn't mention earlier, but I am definitely no exception to the criticism that I've put forth here about people guarding themselves and putting up boundaries. I just take this. I do it in a sneaky way, where I can on one hand make a whole video dedicated to talking about connection and people's boundaries and so forth. But then when I'm actually put to the test in a real situation, that I feel the same fear, and I have always, not every time, but I have shied away from it and closed myself off in different ways too. I've just always been clever about making it seem like it's the other person who's the reason that connection is failing. It's never me, which when put that bluntly sounds kind of like manipulative or sort of toxic. It's not. It's sort of, I'm being self-analytical of like the way that my brain sort of naturally responds to that same fear that our brains all react to. To be clear about what I mean, because that sounded kind of bad, it's more about like designing my life in such a way that I'm trying to seek connection from someone or something where it's highly unlikely, possibly impossible, that connection's going to take place, but only ever looking for connection in places where it's unattainable. And I feel like the number one thing we know from psychology, as far as I can tell, is that most of like the good life and happiness these days is achieved through trying to compromise and negotiate with the brain, and it's overwhelming like protection. I don't know what to call it. Like our brain's like an overprotective parent, or something like that. Always trying to convince us to say no to everything and close ourselves off to any slight danger, which is for a lot of people with anxiety these days, it's everything all the time. The brain's just in overdrive. Like, no, don't do that shit. We're gonna fucking die. And it's like, dude, it's just the supermarket. I'm just gonna go buy some stuff. It's fine. Like, we need to work on a compromise. And I feel like when it comes to, being close to people, it is a process. It's a learning process of learning to compromise with the brain and like understand what part of you it's trying to protect and why, and trying to convince it. This is so weird talking about like me and my brain as separate entities, but I mean it's sort of in a poetic sense almost. I'm sure you know what I mean, hopefully. But I don't know, I think it's punishment for talking about my brain. It made me lose my train of thought. But I will say that trying to compromise with the brain is harder than ever these days, because in no small part because of advertising, I think. Take for instance, I've been using a dating app recently for the first time in a while. I tried a while back, and it just wasn't. I don't know. I felt like a worse version of myself when I was using it, and I wasn't sure why. I was just sort of, in some sense, I got it because I was feeling sort of, I don't know, like maybe it came from loneliness or like an optimism of like, you know what, I feel like I could connect with someone. I feel like I'm open to that in my life at this point. But then ultimately feeling lonelier and like less optimistic than ever. I don't know. And this time around, I'm coming to realize that even something as sort of innocuous as a dating app, that on the surface appears to serve the function of getting people to meet each other and form connections, but it's actually way more fucking sinister than that, I think. And like, I know I'm probably late to the game on this realization, but I feel like the primary point of of these dating apps is for a company to profit on especially like male insecurity and male loneliness, which it's no secret by this point that that's like, I think loneliness and connection issues are sort of, don't, maybe this is a bit far-fetched for me to say, but like, I feel like they're generally thought of in the zeitgeist as worse in men than in women. And there are up to like 10 times as many men as there are women on these dating apps at any one given fucking time. So, but the way these dating apps are headed, man, like, they're gonna have more microtransactions than fucking Fortnite eventually, because I think the most egregious one that I've seen is on Bumble, which is an app where like when you match with, well, I've caught myself, I only know from a hetero perspective how the app works. I'm actually not sure how it works for others, but between hetero matches, if a man and a woman match, the woman then has 24 hours to send a message, and if they don't, the match expires, and it's gone forever. But on the man's end, he can see that there's a match, and there's a literal timer that goes around it. Like, it ticks, the 24 hours is slowly but surely ticking away, and you're losing this match if this person who you don't know, who's completely out of your control, like, you can't say anything, if they don't choose to message you in that 24 hours, it disappears. But you can pay money to extend. Like, it's like buying double XP in like COD or something. You can pay to like extend it by 24 hours, I think. And that's just the most fucking bizarre move ever. I mean, that wouldn't even look good. Like, that's one of those ones where it's like, yeah, I'm trying to exemplify how these companies prey on our brains, and the way that our brains try to protect ourselves, and the way that they're insecure and stuff like that. But that's one, maybe that's like too bad of an example, because like, I feel like you just have to be kind of a dummy to do that, to extend a match. Because I mean, if they're not messaging you within the 24 hours, you're not even guaranteed. It's not like, I don't even know if they'd get notified on their end. If they did, I don't know if they would appreciate it. It's like, this guy just spent money to like give me 24 more hours. All that's gonna do is pressure someone who already didn't really want to message you into doing it. So I don't fucking know about that one. But it exists. It's an option. It's a way for that company to make money. People must be buying it. And I would say that this is an instance where it's worse for women. Generally speaking, outside of dating apps, advertising, preying on the brain's insecurities and worries and so on. I think women are targeted more for that generally, and like, throughout the last however many decades, we've been overexposed to advertising everywhere we go. Before every YouTube video, just in public everywhere, billboards, like TV, you know first fucking hand. I mean, wasn't even Netflix gonna have a version of their service where you get ads? Like, I don't know if it was gonna be ads for Netflix, but I'm assuming it was gonna be ads in general. And so I've come to start to wonder, like, if I'm feeling insecure about something, has that insecurity been blown way out of proportion by someone who wants to profit from it? Or is this something I should actually be worried about? Is my brain onto something here? But with that, I think we've officially gone pretty far off into the weeds from the original topic. So this might be a natural good place to end it. Hopefully you've enjoyed this return to the cave hour. I will almost certainly return again at some point in the future. I don't think it's going to be, you know, as often as it was when it started, but you never know. But anyways, thanks for listening, and you know, make an effort in your real life, you know, quote unquote, as opposed to your internet life, to connect with someone. You know, extend yourself and them the courtesy of just creating an opening. You know, open the door and hold it open for a little bit, even if it's uncomfortable. And with that, that's the end of this episode of the Cave Hour. I usually end by playing the Cave song, or last episode I played one of my own songs. This time I'm just gonna let it fizzle out awkwardly. It's just gonna kind of come to an end. I don't know how. Yeah, maybe I'll I might even cut it like mid-sentence.